Welcome to Unleash Your Inspired Voice, the podcast that focuses on developing a more conscious-minded, heart-centered approach to life and business. And now here to introduce today's special guest is the host of Unleash Your Inspired Voice, author, content strategist, and Unity Consciousness activist, Peter Clark Nelson.
Hi, my name is Peter Clark Nelson, your host for Unleash Your Inspired Voice. Our guest for today's show is Matthew Patti. In this episode, Matthew and I are going to talk about New Earth Abundance. We'll explore what this means for you to reach a higher state of potential and how you can actualize a more fulfilling journey as a conscious leader. Matthew is the creator of the Practitioner Leadership Academy and the New Earth Abundance movement. As a global leader in consciousness, human excellence, and spiritual growth, he is a sought-after international speaker, spiritual teacher, and mentor. Matthew is well known for blending metaphysical principles with practical business know-how to supercharge and accelerate your abundance. For that reason, it's no surprise that coaches, well-being professionals, and spiritualpreneurs seek out Matthew when they're ready to create more money, more meaning, and more freedom in their life. Having spent more than 2.5 decades at the forefront of metaphysical healing, spirituality, and leadership, Matthew shares timeless wisdom with more than 45,000 luminaries throughout America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. I've been waiting a long time to interview Matthew and truly excited to have him on this episode of Unleash Your Inspired Voice. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Peter Clark Nelson, and I want to welcome you to a new episode of the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. This is the show that teaches you how to scale your consciousness while scaling your business. And as you heard during the intro, my guest today is Matthew Patti. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here. Really looking forward to what we unpack together.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. And, for people who are just now coming to the show and listening to this for the first time, maybe having been introduced to Matthew for the first time, what Unleash Your Inspired Voice is all about is scaling your consciousness while scaling your business. And Matthew personifies this. He's one of the few people I know that is actively out talking about business concepts, working with heart-centered, conscious-minded entrepreneurs, and moving them through very tangible, defined systems and funnels. And yet, he's talking about metaphysical energies. He's talking about chakras. He's talking about all sorts of things that are spiritually related, raising your consciousness. He's, like I said, he's one of the few people that's blending these two ideas and concepts together. And most importantly, Matthew, this is the thing that really inspires me as much as anything. You are so genuine and authentic in what you do. And in our conversations over the last year, I've learned quite a bit from you and the things that you're doing with now the New Earth Abundance. And I want to hear all about that. I know the audience is really curious as to what that is. But first, let's talk about your inspired message. So, share what your inspired message is and how you're working with heart-centered, conscious-minded entrepreneurs to scale their business while also helping them scale their consciousness.
Thanks, Peter. Wow, what an intro. Couldn't have said it better any other way. So really, the inspired voice, my inspired voice is simple. It is to grow leaders in the field of consciousness, healing, and transformation, not followers. So the guru is the self. So when we dial into the inner guru, then we embody that inner guru, then we're able to move our message forward with greater liquidity, with greater energy and purpose and magnitude out into the world in service of others and in service of our highest vision and purpose, which is, in my view, why we're here.
Oh, it's beautiful. One of the things I really like about what you just said, and this is, again, for people who are tuning into this show for the first time and they're trying to understand, isn't it important to scale a business? Isn't it important to have followers, and the more followers you have, the more leads you have, and I got to build a sales funnel, I got to scale my business, all of this stuff that people are being drawn to and in some cases can be incredibly overwhelmed with. What you just said is the difference between you're not so much helping people learn how to follow or even get followers as much as it is about becoming a leader. So from your perspective, what is some of the differences between how you may have been, you and I kind of came up at the same time. We've been influenced by some of the same individuals, that we're talking about leadership, the last 10, 15, 20 years. What's the difference between the concept and message of leadership previously and how that's shifting, particularly with what you're doing?
Yeah, what a great question, Peter. I think my strongest belief is that we lead the self into our next destiny, our next epic move, and our next quantum leap, what we want to create, what we want to experience, what we want to live, breathe as our own reality. And so as leadership, it does take accountability. It does take responsibility. And those two things are supported by confidence, and confidence does come from clarity. So when you are clear about why you are here, you are clear about where you are going, who you serve, what impact it is that you want to create or help mobilize, and ultimately what legacy you'd like to leave generations for those generations to come, then obstacles become on the way rather than in the way. Your clarity becomes your mastery. And so when we talk about energy, as you know, I'm a big proponent of energy. Energy precedes matter. We can go to the sales funnel. We can go to unpacking who is our ideal client avatar, what niche, what's our product name, what's its outcome. But first we need to dial into that guru within, that inner leader that says, hey, what do I stand for? And at times we're asked to polarize. And because we do that at this third dimensional reality, there's and fourth dimension, we're into polarization, left and right, up and down, light and dark, heavy and light. And same with fourth density, where it's so there is a construct there that a unique leader, as you and I have discussed, this next wave leader is interested, available, and willing to enter that space first. And being at first, they could be in business for the last 5, 10, 20 years. It could have been something that was birthed as an idea or a concept a year ago or even last week. But the first is right now. So we start with energy. The energy around leadership, for some, feels heavy. It feels burdensome. It feels like a mantle on their shoulders, because you haven't yet shifted your perspective to being of service to people rather than in service of people. So when we are an of people person, we tend to want to get in our own way. Yeah, and we worry about what they think, whether we're on the right track, and we take on other people's responsibilities. The leader carries the vision and keeps that flame, that torch alight.
That's amazing. I love that. And, for people listening to this podcast or watching the video, there's going to be a lot of aha moments you're going to get through this. And I know that because I've had numerous conversations with Matthew where literally it's just a series of aha moments. And he and I get off of talking on the phone, and I'm just kind of sitting there just letting everything percolate and digest. And a couple of days later, I'm feeling it and I'm applying it in the things I do. And so I say that because for those of you listening to the podcast right now and watching this video, I invite you to go back and listen again to what Matthew was just talking about with respect to leadership. Because here's the thing about the patriarchal mindset, the way that we were raised with leadership. If you look at the definitions of leadership and what constituted a successful leader, most of those individuals, quite honestly, weren't truly leading. They were creating an environment to get the most out of people through fear, through scarcity-driven techniques. And in the midst of doing that, yeah, sure, you put a gun to somebody's head, not necessarily a literal gun, and even though some leaders did that, I'm talking about in the corporate world, even in the entrepreneurial world, where the proverbial gun to somebody's head is threatening them with their job or giving them some incentive that really isn't a real incentive. It's just a way to get them to produce and perform during a short period of time and just drive people into the ground. That's not a leader. No. This new wave of leadership is about consciousness. It's about heart-centered. And as Matthew was talking about, it's starting from within. It's being your own guru, which again is a reinterpretation of how we were raised to perceive gurus. So, in the previous regimes, in the previous incarnations of leaders and conscious movements, we were drawn to the individual, which is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going to seminars. There's nothing wrong with being inspired and buying books from the same person or whatever it might be. But there's a difference between being inspired by somebody then trying to emulate that person. And in the midst of doing that, you lose yourself and you get off the path. And then all of a sudden your voice is no longer yours, it's someone else's, and it's regurgitated through whatever shit you're trying to deal with. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're succeeding possibly, but you're unfulfilled. So I want to talk about this journey of how you, Matthew, were able to get to this point where you're now talking about the concepts of being your inner guru, your inner guru and the mastery of self through clarity. I'm pretty sure that wasn't things that you were being taught when you were coming up and starting your business and working in the corporate world. So share a little bit about your journey and some of the things that you were experiencing that brought you to this point.
Yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely love to. And quite often, just as a merit point, we do not make available enough opportunities to share where we've come from. We share our story, but where we have truly, our key turning points as leaders, our key drivers and learnings that have come from those turning points. So I take every opportunity. I receive every opportunity available to share where I've come from. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess one thing that I share with my people, with my clan, my tribe, is my first memory of all of this was that I came in not seeing the world as upside down, not seeing it as an inverted concept, that it was distorted. And so, as most children, you are adventurous in your own way. You're curious. And so from a very early age, what sparked my curiosity was anything to do with the unknown, anything to do with the occult or the esoteric or the mystical. It could even have been, UFOs or apparitions or ghosts and supernatural, anything like that from a very, very young age. I don't necessarily share that with many other members of my family, but that's okay. And so as I grew into my teens, there were confidence things that occurred. I remember not being able to, speak to girls at that age. I couldn't make a lot of eye contact and all those sort of things because there was that vulnerable aspect of me. But if I took myself away, got myself out of the way from having to connect physically with someone, I knew why I was here. And of course you go through, I want to be a helper. I want to be a healer. I want to lead in some capacity, even though that concept, that word, that term was not in my vocabulary in my teens. And so, I moved into sport was an expression of who I am. So for some it's art, it's music, but sport was really, really the expression of my inspired nature, of my inspirational energy. And I excelled at sport. And that led me into a physical journey, a physiological journey to study, the body, biomechanics, physiology, and that's what I ended up mastering in, and built my first largest company as a rehabilitation expert with clients as CEOs and elite athletes and surgeons and doctors, and that's sort of the tripwire across those I'd say you could call it 20 years in health, well-being, and transformation taught me that there is always an entry point, and the entry point is where you are right now. And so at no point did I say, I'm not where I'm meant to be. I just took the opportunity to calibrate, am I happy where I am? Am I seeing the opportunity to break out, to shift gears? And every time I did that and I dialed into that, well, I'm no longer happy doing what I'm doing, or I don't feel the inspiration. I didn't look at that and compress it and keep me where I was. I seeded my field, or what I call charged my field, unconsciously and competently at that time. And invariably, a new opportunity, something that was a higher calibration or alignment to my next step or phase in the wheel, revealed itself, presented itself, and so moved into nutrigenomics. And I knew nothing about genetics, only the foundational principles, and co-founded a healthy living, healthy aging company that's doing very well today. And then went into, well, I am an entrepreneur, and I do want to connect with that grounded mindset that is, let's take an idea and let's apply it and let's move it forward in the world. And so working with entrepreneurs and business owners and startups, helping them with media and marketing and the social aspects, so those platforms. But there was something missing. And that big something missing really landed for me, I guess, starting around beginning of 2010, and really slid into home base at the end of 2012. And that was in one moment, one message with one mentor. It changed. I can feel it in my body now. I can feel that shift and that illumination, the tingles, but also the emotion, because I know it struck me so deeply that for the next 3 to 6 months, all I could feel and sense in my field was change. And now looking back on it with, Harry hindsight, it was a dimensional shift. And so I heard the very clear message: lead the light, lead the way. Build leaders, not followers. And so that brings me to where I am today, still evolving, still, let's say, reducing this special, bolognese or pasta sauce, reducing it down to its peak flavor. And that's what I'm enjoying. Yeah. Exploring more.
That's a beautiful journey. Very inspiring too. And I love being able to hear all of the different experiences that heart-centered and conscious-minded entrepreneurs bring. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this podcast, was because, truth be told, when we're in our own journey and our experience, the transitions where you were talking about charging the field, and I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to provide some context for people who are, listening in on the podcast and watching this, is that during those transitions, it's not easy. There's a difficulty, because what we're doing is we're having to let go of things that we were investing our sense of identity, our sense of success and worthiness into. So, in the business context, when we invest in something, we want a positive return on that investment. And if we're going all in and all of a sudden the current changes and shifts, well, if we don't shift with that current, we may still have some success, but eventually we're going to hit a wall. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. And if you're not prepared for it, hitting that wall, going 150 miles an hour, there's no do-over. It's done. And a lot of entrepreneurs, and you and I have seen this, it's happened to me, and I'm very fortunate that I was able to survive when I hit that wall. And so what I'm saying with this is that in those transitions, when people are hearing the ping or the calling of their soul, what you're talking about is this idea of yours of charging the field and being able to recognize you're not in the wrong place. You're actually in the right place. It's just you're having to maybe expand your awareness and perceptions just a little bit to see into a new opportunity. So talk a little bit about that. Like, what are some of the things that you've done to navigate some of the difficulty in those transitions, and how you've been working with people since 2010 in this regard?
Yeah, great. The one thing, that we learn most from is contrast. And so, when I was just feeling it the way through, anytime that I felt, there was, I was in stumbling mode, or I was in frustration mode, or contraction mode, or things just weren't aligning, not happening. It may have taken a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It may even have taken 3 months. But I got to a point where I said, how am I observing? What am I observing about these shifts, these changes? And my insight taught me to trust that change, like the analogy of the lobster. You're going to feel a little bit vulnerable when you shed your shell. Same with coming out of the egg. So you're rebirthing yourself every time you're going through a frustration or a collapse or a contraction. And I learned very quickly to say, well, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And most importantly, to go to the next level, it's happening by me. Because at the highest level of my creation, I am propelling myself forward. I am calling myself to my next quantum leap, my next biggest moment, my next, shelf of learning or stage of development. And from that point, I started to say, well, I'm charging my field. And it's not charging money. It's sort of saying, well, damn it, I'm going to charge my field with intention and integrity and alignment, and I'm going to bring forward that which is clearest and highest in my own mastery. And look, it turned a 3-month process of jostling and being distracted and all these sort of things into at times a 24-hour or a 15-minute process. And I said, what is happening? There are resources and information available to me. It's working, it's not working, it's frustrating, or it's illuminating. And I started to look at those things and say, well, what's not working for me anymore? And what is? And where am I out of my genius? And where am I in illumination and in full, greater, higher embodiment of my gifts? And at that point, they became really pivotal, powerful shifting points. And that's what I refer to as charge your field, because we can often become so disillusioned by the busyness of our outside world and the impact of energy, the impact of intention of others, the world revolving around us. Yet again, the sun is rising in the east and it's setting in the west, and you think, gosh, another day has gone past. But it just takes moments. It takes just a few moments to calibrate and ask that question. And with that comes your potential, your opportunity to charge your field with what you want. Not what you feel you deserve, because that's the second layer, but what the frig you want. What do you really, 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 really want? You can have anything. Because the two prime things, if we go to the sub and super levels of any person, and business, as you know, Peter, is just an extension of our personal growth and evolution. It's just an expression of who we are. My belief is we're here for 2 reasons. We are here to learn to master energy, to manipulate it, if you don't like that word, to command it, to grasp it and understand it. And the second thing is to shift density. And when we can shift density, we can actually stop living in the past and hoping that our future is different. We can feel lighter. We can live a more embodied life and a rich life as well.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for just breaking that down and explaining that process, because you're using terms that a lot of people are familiar with, like energy. So you hear about it, if you're working in a company or you talking to your own self, it's like, I don't really have the energy today, or, my energy's off the charts today.
Yes,
so we hear about that. But because of the way most of us were raised and educated, we've been taken away from the truth of our reality and who and what we are. Everything is energy, and energy is everything. We are energy. We're an expression of energy. An exchange of money is an exchange of energy. Mm-hmm. And, as you talked about, mastering your energy and commanding it, it is not about commanding energy to somehow gain control or power over other people. This goes back to being a true leader, a person who's actually listening to their heart and allowing that to guide them. And that takes me back into what you were talking about with shifting density, because we live in a world that is dense, right? Energetically speaking. And so when we can break through those multiple layers of density and have a much higher level of clarity, that's when we're becoming a master of our energy, a master of our own space. And, I was saying earlier about the whole idea of, investing in things, and that when people invest in something, they're unwilling to let go because they're just wanting to get some positive return. Well, here's the thing that, I want to underscore what Matthew's saying for everybody listening and watching this. When you're investing into your career, you're investing into your business, into your inspired message, and you start getting very clear signs and the patterns are guiding you into something else, and you're being guided to shift gears, you're not losing anything. In fact, you're gaining, because there are opportunities that are opening up. And when you show up to those opportunities, new people, new levels of energy are welcoming you. And again, there might be a bit of a time frame in terms of shifting, but as Matthew is talking about, as I can attest to, as so many other heart-centered, conscious-minded entrepreneurs can speak about, is that once you actually step into that new wave of energy, your idea of abundance is going to radically change, and it's going to change for the better. So I want to talk a little bit about that concept of abundance, because I know you've got a new program that's called New Earth Abundance. I love the name. I've gone through the website, what you are presenting and how people are participating in this and learning and growing is incredibly inspiring. So if you can, talk a little bit about New Earth Abundance and, where did that name, that term come from for you? And then how is it being applied in what you're doing now?
Fantastic. Let's break it down. One thing that I've learned, and don't always get it right, is say it how it is. And so if it feels like New Earth, that's the statement. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new paradigm. It's a new shift. We must shed something in order to bring the new. So the old is not a part of the new. And abundance, it's something that has come up with my clients a lot, even though, they invest a lot of time and energy to get their message out there and to build, thriving and lucrative tribes and businesses. At the end of the day, they still want to feel the freedom that they conceptually link to the theme of abundance. And so when I put it together, it was really just it was a guided principle. It was a guided message. And it goes all the way back to that 2012, which is lead the light, lead the way. And abundance, if you think of what most people feel they have a void of in their life, it's either money, love, or connection, or time. And so, if we take the superficiality, the judgment away from it, and we say abundance is a language. You can say it's a frequency, it's a vibration, it's a tone, but it's a language. And so to learn to speak, to engage and embody this language is highly, highly useful. And so the New Earth Abundance movement and the ambassador training linked to that is for that very reason. You must be the flame that ignites your field. We cannot wait for someone else to do it for us. It may feel like heavy lifting. But the New Earth Abundance is literally about that. We are moving, as many or those that are aware and research, we're moving through a vast phase in a photon belt. Lots of electromagnetic waves and new information that we are receiving all the time. And as we speak, we are in a window of a lot of geosolar events. So a lot of people may be feeling some changes and shifts in their body, some distortions. But when we look at abundance, abundance is all things. Abundance is. And so how freeing would it feel and liberated would you feel to know that whatever arrives, is created by you in your reality is abundance. So you can master the language of abundance by getting clearer on what you want. And when you have clarity, monomaniacal, monocular view, single focus, when two eyes become one, as Jesus or any of the other, masters were reported to have said. It is the third eye. It is the pineal gland. And so abundance is a creation. It's a collaborator. And so I see that, for more people around the globe to learn the language of abundance, the New Earth is going to be crystallized. It is going to be, activated at a higher rate, and its momentum has already been carried forward through the consciousness and the curiosity of people, listening to this program as well. So learn the language of abundance. It's not something that is given to you. It's something you have. It is something you were created from. And when you engage it, you may not tangibly see it and feel it with your five senses just now. It seeks to create a relationship with you. It seeks to increase rapport and its relationship with you. So when you learn the language of abundance, you actually show up on the universe's radar as a stronger light, which means you call in and attract to you magnetically greater opportunities or shifts of potential, relationships. Who you are becomes more available to you and therefore to other people. And what you lay your hand upon or what you lay your intention upon is magnetically charged with your highest intention, and we start to let's say, what we've held as reality, the struggle, the contraction, the heaviness, the labor, the effort falls away. That's the root of it there.
That's absolutely true. I love how you're just reinterpreting concepts and words that have been branded about for a long time. I mean, abundance is not a new word.
No.
The concept of a new earth is not new. I mean, Eckhart Tolle did a book called The New Earth, and that's been out for a long time. The thing is, and some of the things you're talking about with attracting, people harken back to the law of attraction. The thing that you're doing, and a lot of other people I'm beginning to see on a much larger scale, is we are now emerging into a space and time where it's no longer enough to simply attract the right person or attract the car or the job or any of these other things. As you were saying earlier, what do you really want? And it's about digging deep. It's about going inward. The term called shadow work. We had Janine Hassel on an earlier episode, and she was talking about shadow work. It's a reoccurring theme in a lot of the episodes that I have on this podcast, as it is a reoccurring theme in all of our journeys. It's about going deep and unearthing what is in the way of what you really want. A lot of people can go out and manufacture or manifest a new car, manifest a new job. But how many times, people listening to this podcast, I want to just ask this question: how many times have you manifested what you wanted only to find yourself still unfulfilled? In fact, in many cases, actually feeling worse than you did when you didn't have what you wanted.
Yes.
How the hell is that possible? Why does that happen? Well, a lot of that happens because you haven't gone deep enough to understand what you truly want and to find your authentic voice, to find that message, and to listen and charge that field, as Matthew was talking about earlier. So, Matthew, I want to ask you ask you a question that when you're talking about this idea of abundance, you said something earlier that your five senses, right? So you said about activating the third eye. So for people who are not sure what the chakras are, I'm assuming most of the people listening to this podcast have some familiarity with chakras. If you don't, I invite you, go to Google, go find a book, go to Amazon, and start looking at what chakras are. They are your energy centers in your body. They are archetypical and psychological representations of your own being. And so I won't get into all of that, but I want to go back to my question, though. You were saying that you've got the third eye that's getting activated, right? So other chakras are being activated too. One of the challenges, I know a lot of people who've even been on a path of spirituality and consciousness for a long time, they start hearing these concepts and it sounds wonderful. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good, but my environment sucks. Right? Somebody might be thinking that, or they've got a lack of this or a lack of that, or maybe they don't have a lack of things, but they look outside themselves and the world around them, and they're like, okay, this person is president, or this person is doing this in that country. We look like we're going to war here or going to war over there. It's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to understand and conceptualize in a real context that we are literally living in the most abundant times of all modern humanity. We have access to more information, but not only that, we have access to the ability to understand how to use this information. We have people like Matthew on this planet. I mean, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to find somebody like Matthew. And if you did, it certainly wouldn't have been from the confines of your phone or your home. You would have had to go somewhere and had to search and look really far to find somebody like Matthew talking openly about what he is talking about. So Matthew, share with us some techniques and some things you've learned about how to shift a person's perspective when the environment or the circumstances they're in might not look or feel abundant, but in their heart, they know abundance is there, and they're really looking at sort of balancing and reconciling the contrast of where they might be, comparatively speaking, to where they want to go to.
Great question. Gosh, this is probably a 3-day intensive to go deep into all this sort of thing. But in the time that we have for the listeners to get as much value as possible, let's go back to 2 points that I made earlier. Quite often we see life happening to us. Then we move to life happening for us. We think, well, everything happens for me, but I still don't like it. I'm in resistance to that point. When we arrive at life happens by me, not for or to, that's when you can start to engage the external world as the extension of who you, of where you've been, your thoughts, your belief structure, your environment. You know, there are a lot of, experts out there that are talking, the body, time, and environment. When you can get outside of those three things, which is why meditation is really important, why being in nature, where you lose yourself, you lose time. That's the language of abundance. Because abundance is not linked to time. It's a human concept or a dimensional concept that we've been given. So if you look in your outer world and all you're seeing is contraction or resistance or frustration or heaving and effort and heaviness, I would go back. I would think first about the donut. And you go, what's a donut? Well, let's relate it to the Taurus. So if you go to Taurus and have a look that online, toroid fields move in and out. Ourselves have toroidal fields. We have a toroidal field. The earth, every celestial body has a toroidal field, just as a magnet. So abundance is an in and an out. It is not one way. It is not me observing the world as happening to me. It's observing the world as happening by me. And I can say, well, I don't like that, but how do I shift it? How do I shift my financial state or my relationship? The first point is to own your power and be accountable. And we're not looking for blame here. We're actually looking to say, well, yeah, if it's in my awareness, that's what I'm seeing. My reticular activating system is showing me this because I've got beliefs that are wired, neuro and biochemically wired, to show me these things. So when you can own it and you say, no one else exists but me, because we're all linked, inextricably linked and unified as in oneness, as you know, Peter. That's the first point to start. Own it and be accountable. It is up to me to shift my reality. And how you do that, well, it's aligning with someone or some people called a tribe or let's call it an accountability or an alignment partner, where you can start to voice your inner views, but someone that is traversing and traveling the same path as you, or in the same trajectory. Otherwise, you're going to quite often take on someone else's beliefs. So to shift any energy, understand that it is what you experience, what you are experiencing now is a direct result of your past thoughts, words, and deeds. It's a historic record that is in your field right now. It is not your future, and it is actually not your real now. It's an illusion. So when you can get over that fact and say, well, my past doesn't equal my future because I own the fact that I'm responsible for my reality, that's where we come back to clarity. What do I want? And, females particularly will find it difficult at first, not all, to say what I really want, because they've typically subjugated themselves or in service of others before the self. So when you really get to the root of it is, what do you want? And it's not the money, the love, or the expression. It's something as simple as to be present, or to feel joy, or to be free, or to be happy, or to feel peace, or to whatever it may be. That's the anchor point. So I've said a lot of things there, but at the center of the Taurus, at the center of the donut is a creational point, a magnetic, electromagnetic field. Go to the feeling, which you spoke about, the heart. Go to the feeling first. Build resonance in the feeling, and then look to amplify and strengthen that through relationships with others, through the words and thoughts that you have, and through the actions that you take on a daily basis.
You're absolutely, first and foremost, that's just incredible. It's very rare to talk about a Taurus at the same time we're talking about business and abundance.
Yes.
I often look at a Taurus sort of like the cosmic laundromat, right? So it's clearing out things and it's bringing in something new. And, our responsibility, like, for example, we take our suits or our dresses into a laundromat. We don't hop the counter and start telling the laundromat how to do its business or follow our clothes into where it's being dry cleaned or washed. We trust We bring it in. We say, this is what we're looking for. We trust it's going to be done right. We go back and we pick it up when it's ready. Okay. The Taurus, in a very simplistic way of looking at things, is that it is going to give you the opportunity to clear, cleanse, replenish, revitalize, rejuvenate. And as Matthew was talking about, and there's a term he's actually used quite a bit in our conversations, is a point of light. That's at that center, right? So one of the things you mentioned earlier is, okay, so women might have a difficult time of speaking their truth because for so many centuries, women have been subjugated to a place of just simply servitude, as has been the case for men and a lot of people in culture. So if you look at like our generation and the previous generation, most people were raised to be seen and not heard. So you were told what your opportunities were, which were usually pretty limited. You were told how far you could go, which was usually pretty limited. And if you wanted to go any further, well, there was a tremendous amount of sacrifice that was required for you to get there. So you sacrifice who and what you are to get what you want. You end up losing who you are and what you are. And next thing you know, you're unfulfilled. So I think what's really important here about all of this and the idea of community too, if you are listening to this podcast and watching this and you're saying, this is amazing, I want to learn more about Matthew, I want to learn more about this New Earth Abundance, and you're not sure where to go and how to do things. First of all, Matthew's going to talk about that in just a second, where you can get more information. But I want to also say to you, go out, become proactive of finding a community that resonates with you. Because you may be in an environment where you cannot speak openly about some of the subjects that Matthew and I are talking about or other guests on my show talk about. You might not be in a place where you can really, shine your light, so to speak, or unleash your inspired voice. But let me tell you something. There are places and there are communities that will recognize you, that will support you, that will acknowledge you. So the first thing to do is something that only you can do, and that is to say yes. Say yes to your inner guru. And then once you do that, as Matthew talked about earlier, opportunities begin to open up. And then the next thing to do is to say yes to the opportunities and step into them. Because when you show up, opportunities open up and new people come in. And before you know it, you will have attracted an entirely new reality. And your environment will have been changed and radically altered to acquiesce with the rising vibration and frequency by which you are now emitting. So that is so key. With that said, Matthew, as we wrap things up here, for those people who are intrigued, which I'm assuming everybody watching this and listening to this, if you're not intrigued, check your pulse. What's the next step? Where can people learn more about New Earth Abundance and learn more about yourself? And how could they work with you?
Fantastic. And I loved what you said in summary, how you bring that all together. Very, very important to find your tribe. We ultimately seek to belong, and we are never disconnected. It's the illusion that we are separate. So we can go into that another time. But for those that are interested, you can go to Matthew Patti, MatthewPatti.com /abundance. So if you go to MatthewPatti.com /abundance, I'll have waiting there for you the 7 keys to manifesting your highest vision and living an energy-rich life. So I'll have that waiting for you, which is about a 60-minute group webinar with my premium clients. You get that for free. There's a handout with it where we actually overlay the 7 steps through the 7 chakras of dialing into your highest vision and moving them down into the earthly plane so that you can activate and accelerate your abundance, whether it's in business or in your personal life. So that's what I've got for you there.
That's amazing. Well, I'm definitely going there, and I'm sure everybody watching this and listening, they're going to go there as well. Again, Matthew, I just want to say what an honor it has been to not only know you as a friend, to be able to have the conversations we've had, but it is truly an honor to have you on the show. Thank you very much for everything that you've shared.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much, Peter. Well done.
You're very welcome. And to everybody listening and watching this, thank you for joining us on the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. I want to wish everybody an abundant day. And remember, go and unleash your inspired voice, because the world needs to see, hear, and feel your inspired message now more than ever. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to having you on the next episode of Unleash Your Inspired Voice. To learn more about Matthew Patti, be sure to visit matthewpatti.com. That's MatthewPatti.com. You can also follow him on social media at facebook.com/Matthew Christian Patti. As you just heard Matthew speak about at the end of the interview, he's offering a free mini masterclass on the 7-step process from manifesting your highest vision on the earthly plane and living an energetically rich life. During this mini masterclass, you'll learn how to work with your chakras to activate and accelerate your abundance in your personal and professional life. To get access to this transformative mini masterclass, visit matthewpatti.com/abundance. Matthew has also been gracious enough to gift the listeners to this podcast a free downloadable workbook that contains a 5-step checklist on how to discover your unique gifts, hidden talents, and life purpose. If you're looking to unleash your inspired voice and make a bigger difference in the world, then be sure to visit unleashyourinspiredvoice.com and sign up for the bonus material. When you sign up, you'll gain access to this downloadable workbook from Matthew, and you will also continue to receive access to all bonus materials from many of our show's previous and upcoming guests. As always, I'm honored by the presence and support of all the listeners who join us on the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast.